Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast with Christine Luken, the financial dignity coach. In this podcast, we help you recover a positive and peaceful relationship with your personal finances. We do this by bringing together wise money management with emotional intelligence. Join us for this journey where we navigate our relationship with money as Christine Luken draws from years of experience and guest experts to help you get to the root of your money issues.
Hello and welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast with your host, Christine Luken. Christine, it's great to see you again. How you doing these days?
I am doing amazing because
Excellent.
This weekend I am headed down to Florida. So we're getting my dad settled down there for the winter in his new house.
Ooh.
So I'll be golfing on Monday. So I'm very
Very
excited.
nice. Very nice. I'm stuck here in the cold Northeast where there will be no golfing soon.
Maybe mini golfing inside somewhere.
Possible. Well, actually, there are indoor clinics where you can work on your swing.
Oh,
So
good.
that would be about where everybody is going to be coming very soon, I'm sure. Today's topic is a little important to me because, a little confession here. I am a senior parent, so.
You are. Yes. Well, today's episode is helping your senior parents with money. And I'm honored to welcome my friend and special guest, Julianne Miller. She's an accredited financial counselor and the owner of Life Money Management. She is a longtime member of the American Association of Daily Money Managers. Welcome, Julianne.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, so, this is really an important topic, especially for those of us who are Gen Xers, right? Because we've got parents who are getting into their 70s and, even into their 80s. And some of them need our help with money. And that's why I asked you to come on, because I'm dealing with that right now in my life. And I know a lot of our listeners are as well. So before we really get into the meat of this topic, I'd love for you to tell us about your personal journey that led you to financial coaching and daily money management.
Christine, I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to talk about this because this is a really important topic. I used to work in an accounting firm for 13 years. I've worked with a lot of individuals and families with their personal income taxes. And I was always surprised by the number of clients who didn't understand money. They didn't understand taxes. Some of them even didn't know how to fill out some of the applications. And so not understanding the financial concepts and terms made some things very difficult for them.
Yeah.
And there was one day in particular when there was a woman, an elderly woman who walked in. Her husband had died and she had no idea how to take care of any of the bills. And so that was very concerning because she was walking into a place that, although she knew us, she really didn't know us well, and she was trusting us to literally take over all of her finances on her behalf. And so I felt that she and many other aging parents really needed somebody that they could trust to be able to help them with their finances. And that's when I decided to start my company.
Awesome. Yeah. So, you and I have been friends for a while. I always find it funny because I'll have other business owners say, why are you friends with your competitors? Like, you're bringing all these other financial coaches onto your podcast. And, to me, it's like, we're on the same team here. Like, there are so many people that need our help. I couldn't possibly help all of them. You can't possibly help all of them. And I love this sense of camaraderie that we have between financial coaches because there are so many nuances with personal and business finances. And, finding that right person to help you and or your family is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're definitely right that there are so many different types of clients who need different things. And so what's a strength for you is different than what's a strength for me. And so we can help our clients in different ways, even though it's all personal finance.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some signs that our senior parents or other loved ones, perhaps aunts, uncles, etc., might need assistance with their personal finances?
So oftentimes some of the first problems that the adult children or even neighbors might notice is that the aging parent starts to become forgetful. They might become disorganized, especially if they never used to be like that. And all of a sudden you start to really notice it. They might have some new medical challenges that are causing that. And so managing the paperwork starts to become more difficult. They might show signs of mismanaging the money. In other words, they forget to pay the bills, or they suddenly have bank fees that they never had before. You might start to notice all kinds of paperwork on the dining room table, piling up, especially if you start to see charity notices and requests for donations and things like that. So some of those are, some of the early signs of things going on.
Yeah. Let's back up and talk about, some of these signs. Are there, I imagine, if our parent has a diagnosis of something, that, they're starting to show signs of dementia or Alzheimer's, like that would automatically be a trigger of like, hey, somebody's got to step in here and start helping with the finances. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal diagnosis or something that severe.
That's correct. Yeah. And sometimes it's just a normal part of the progression of age. And, maybe they weren't necessarily good with that before, and now it's compounded. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. And are there instances where different like medications and different treatments can interfere with the brain functioning that's required to handle your personal finances?
Yeah, I would definitely say that there could be, just as any medication would have side effects, mental fogginess and, problems with some mental challenges could definitely be a sign of, a side effect of different medicines.
Yeah. Well, I've heard of individuals who have gone through cancer treatments who have, basically said that a side effect of the chemo was it's like they would look at their checkbook or they would look at their bank account and they would just like it just didn't compute. They just didn't even know what to do with it.
Yes. Chronic issues are also chronic pain, and chronic fatigue issues are also another disease or conditions that can cause the same kind of problem as well.
Yeah. And actually I had noticed, so a couple of things. My stepmom passed away 2.5 years ago. And I noticed that, my dad had some pretty serious brain fog going through grief.
The grief. Yes.
And I don't think that people talk about that enough, that there actually is, it's like grief brain that, you can be forgetful, and because that emotion is taking up so much of your mental energy that it can be very easy to forget things or let things slide when you're grieving the loss of a loved one. And in fact, my dad had asked me to step in and help him with the day-to-day bills and the medical bills too.
Oh, yes.
Because that was a whole nother that was a whole nother thing, because my stepmom passed of cancer. My dad had a heart surgery shortly before that. I mean, it was that amount of paperwork was probably even more than the bills.
And to tie that in, you also work with a lot of women who have, are dealing with a lot of emotions from trauma or from different things happening in their lives. So
Right.
those two instances of the grief trauma and that brain fog and all the emotion, what happens is there's all that burden and all that overwhelmingness that it starts to really get in the way of what's going on in the brain, that I just can't deal with this right now. I've got this over here that I need to worry about, and I can't worry about that right now.
Yeah I totally get that. And I've also seen some people with like long-term COVID brain fog.
Oh, yes.
That has been an issue either for themselves or with a parent, where they've had to step in, maybe just temporarily,
right,
until things got better. So so what options do we have to help our senior family members? So let's just say it's something where we know it's going to be long term. What are our options?
There can be a few different options for helping seniors with their money. Oftentimes, it can be really easy to try to choose somebody that lives close by, somebody that can quickly step in to kind of write out the checks, pay the bills, and then they leave when they're done. That's not necessarily always the best way to handle that. You really want to make sure that you're choosing someone trustworthy, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
You can certainly choose a trusted family member who lives close by, a daughter, a son, even a niece or a nephew. You can turn to maybe a longtime family friend, somebody that's been involved in the past and is willing to take on, that responsibility. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you even have, financial advisors or accountants who, might try to help out.
Yeah.
In all of these cases, it's just some people hesitate to get involved because, there's a lot of responsibility to that. There is another option, and that's what we call a daily money manager. That is something that I am. I am a trusted professional who is able to come in and look at the entire situation. I'm able to, successfully sit down and go over everything that needs to be done. And we look at the big picture and are able to work with the family members in a different way. There's a lot to navigate sometime when family's involved, when other outside people are involved, even professionals, when other professionals are involved. And so a daily money manager can help work with all those different individuals to make sure that the aging parent has the right support that they need at all times.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And honestly, before you and I met, I had no idea what a daily money manager was. I didn't even know that was an option. So it's almost like having a personal accountant.
It is. It is.
For your family member.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say probably 6 months after my stepmom passed, my dad took back the management of his personal finances. But then probably about 6 months ago, he said, this is just getting overwhelming. And it wasn't that he could not manage it himself. He did not want to.
Yeah, that's another great point. Some people don't even want to deal with it. Yeah. They're like, you know what? I have better things to do.
Yeah. And so he basically said, I'd love for you to handle this for me. I'm happy to pay you. And I said, okay, because I insist that you pay me.
Yep. Very good.
But not everybody has that option of, okay, my son or my daughter, or I have this family member who's a financial coach or a CPA or an accountant and who actually doesn't mind doing this stuff for a living. Then you've got to bring somebody else in. And I can see where having a daily money manager would actually be very beneficial, especially when you've got sibling rivalry. Yes. And maybe one sibling wanting to control things and or a lack of trust between siblings, that the daily money manager can kind of be that neutral third party.
Yes, and actually, sometimes that's when a family will call in a daily money manager, is because they find that the challenges within the family gets to be too much,
Yeah.
or the aging parent won't trust the family members and would prefer to have a professional handle it.
Yeah.
And so there is an organization that is the leader in the industry called the American Association of Daily Money Managers. And that is an organization that pulls together all of the daily money managers. They have a standard of practice, they have a code of ethics. All of their members are required to have background checks. And so these are professionals who are able to be guided by the industry and provide really high level professionalism to the people who need them the most.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people might have the objection like, well, that's got to be really expensive. And when you and I talked about it, I was like, it's actually not that bad. Like, it's
No,
probably
it's
cost
not.
less than you think.
It does. It does. It costs less than other professionals. And you also
Absolutely.
have to look at, what could happen if they don't have someone like that in their life. That they're really subject to some scams and other issues that could cause bigger problems and more money.
Yeah. And actually, that was my next question for you, because scammers are everywhere these days. And I feel like every other day, my dad is forwarding me some email from like the Geek Squad or something saying like, am I supposed to pay this? And I'm like, no, you don't have the Geek Squad. Don't pay that bill. So what are some things that we should be aware of to protect our parents and other senior relatives from scammers? Because it is so easy to look legitimate.
It is. And I have seen some really complicated and complex scams that I've been surprised by that could easily sway even the most vigilant people. So I'm really glad that your father trusts you enough to share that information with you,
Yeah.
because not all clients will do that.
Mm-hmm.
It is very important that first someone is able to have that confidence to bring that to you. Some of as I mentioned before, charities or fake charities are often, one way of being scammed. So
Right.
that's, can be an issue. I've seen some fake mail come in, of somebody requesting other checks. Fake checks come in. That if you were to sign them, that would be an issue, because then, I don't even know the scam, the whole detail of the scam. But if you cash this, it'll cause a problem for you down the road. Certainly, we've all heard about various phone calls when people call and request money, or they try to get your personal information.
Yep.
So they can open accounts, so they can use your social security number in a variety of ways. So the biggest parts of that, or the biggest ways that you can be aware, is simply to making sure you're checking in with your parent, you're hearing what they're saying. If they're talking about, oh, I've got this call from this lovely man today, and he's talked with me for an hour and I don't even know who he was, things like that. You want to be listening for those kinds of things. Again, watching the mail. You don't necessarily have to be going through the mail, just be, cognizant of what's coming in and what they're talking about to make sure that you're listening for any issues.
Excuse me. Yes, you. Thank you so much for listening to the Money is Emotional podcast. We hope you're enjoying it so far. If you have any questions or would like to talk more about this topic, you can find us at www.christineluken.com, and all of our social media platforms are listed in the show notes.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing that I have noticed, especially with the scammy emails, is to scrutinize the email address.
Yes.
Because sometimes it'll say like that it's from the IRS, but it's something like pay your taxes now at gmail.com is where it's actually coming from.
Mm-hmm. Right.
To pay attention. And yeah, exactly. To say like, is this really coming from, Amazon or the IRS or whatever? Because sometimes there's like a slight misspelling, or it might come from Amazon123.com. And it's like, don't click those links. Don't put in your payment information.
Yes.
So I feel like it's becoming a full-time job to stop scammers. And I keep thinking like, if you would just put that time and effort into something productive, like you could actually make a lot of money doing something legitimate.
Yes. And really do some good for the world instead of some bad.
I know.
Another popular one is the grandson or granddaughter calls.
Yeah.
Or since the pandemic, since everything is a lot of online shopping now, you get a lot of fake online emails, asking for your payment information for the purchase that you didn't make. Those are two other ones.
Yeah. So this is like the big elephant in the room, right? Because when we're talking about helping our senior parents or relatives with money, like, how do we start that conversation? Because for me, my dad basically came to me and said, this is starting to become, a nuisance for me. I want help. A lot of times parents won't initiate that conversation. So how do we, as children of aging parents or nieces and nephews of aging aunts and uncles, etc., how do we even start having that conversation with them?
Well, you are right that this is the hardest part. Often when adult children start to notice something, the senior will deny that something's wrong. They are embarrassed. They don't want other people to think that they can't handle things.
Right.
So a lot of it comes down to sitting down, having a real conversation with the parent and saying, look, I've started to notice some things that I'm concerned about. And I don't want you to be in a position where it costs you money or where you can't handle things. It's important to be compassionate. It's important to be caring. It doesn't help to get angry or to be real harsh. That's just going to push them away. So just sitting down, having that conversation, and then together starting to talk about, what are some of the options or what are some of the resources that can help. It doesn't mean that you have to take all of that away. It might just simply be starting with some simple steps of things that they can, help with. Maybe you just help with the mail to start. Open the mail, you hand it over to the senior, and then they're able to sit down and pay their bills. But you then have eyes on what's happening and can talk through it as you see it. That's just one good example. So, that's really, just again, sitting, listening, being involved. Those are three of the main things.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I've done with my dad, and I think certainly this can be something that other people, that this might be a good kind of hybrid way to manage money, to basically co-manage money. So, I mean, that's essentially what I'm doing right now with him. He's still involved. He still knows what's going on. But, I use a personal finance app with all my clients, and I signed him up for that. And we use it together. So we both can log in and see what's going on. I will call him and say like, hey, I'm classifying all your stuff and I see this check to so-and-so for $1,700. Like, what was that for? And I was like, okay. And, sometimes there are some questions back and forth, and it's, like, so why are you, lending this person or giving this person a couple $1,000? Like, what's going on with that? And, just being able to drop in and see what's going on. That also allows me to make sure that the bills are paid on time as well. So, and one of the things that we've done is we've automated as much of that as possible, as much of the bill paying as possible is all done online, but I can still see the emails coming through of like, hey, your payment for the cable is coming due. And so it's like I can see all of those things, but he can see them as well. So it's not like, oh, I'm just taking all of this away from you,
Right.
and you don't have any control and you don't have any say. But there's kind of like this checks and balances where I've told him, like, look, I am looking out for you.
And that's a great way to keep him involved, and he still has autonomy. He still feels like he is not losing that control, and still has control and say over what's going on with his finances.
Yeah, and I think that's important, especially if you're not if you're just dealing with a situation where it's getting overwhelming and there isn't a formal diagnosis of, oh, my parent has Alzheimer's, dementia, etc. Do you recommend that when there is a good, strong family dynamic and someone is like that logical choice to come in and take over, is it better for them to go ahead and get some things in place like powers of attorney or being a signer on accounts before there's a formal diagnosis?
Absolutely. Once things start to progress, whether there's a diagnosis or not, as things start to progress, it can get very difficult to, number one, for the aging parent to understand what's going on. Number two, to know where things are. Sometimes as you become forgetful, it can be very difficult to remember, where did I put these documents? Where did I put those documents? And so it's important to get involved sooner and start to make sure everything's in place. As part of that, not only the, power of attorney, the will, the health documents, but also go through, bank accounts. Where are the bank statements? Where are the life insurance policies? All of those kinds of things as well. So that way, where everything is as things progress. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I've had to do is compile a list of the websites, right?
Yes.
Like the banking websites and
all online activity.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right, because it's not just where are all the paper statements. A lot of our financial lives are online now. Do you recommend that seniors sign up for, or, children of seniors sign their parents up to monitor their credit score and their credit bureaus?
Yes, I do. Because part of the scams, whether it's by family that are unscrupulous or by scammers, is that there is use of credit cards and personal information to, open credit cards and to use, things like that. So it's really important to monitor those credit accounts to make sure that nothing's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I would say as well is make sure that if you've got anybody that's coming into your senior parents' house on a regular basis, that you've got background checks.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we had a situation where, there was someone who was coming and going in my dad's house on a regular basis. And then we found out that they were convicted of shoplifting.
Oh, gosh.
And so it was like, kind of a reactionary thing of like, okay, well, let's make sure we have identity theft protection and let's make sure that we're monitoring the credit score. And, let's make sure there aren't any checks missing from the middle of the checkbook or anything like that. I think we're okay, but unfortunately, there are a lot of people who prey on seniors because, there can be lowered cognitive function. And, if they're lonely, they're happy to have company.
Yes,
right.
They enjoy the company.
And so that can make it very easy for someone to kind of slip through that trust barrier.
One of the things that I have noticed with my father, he's going through some medical issues right now, and we actually have a lot of people coming through the house. And so you make a very good point about who's coming into the house, but I find it's actually very busy in the house. So it can be easy for him to lose track of what's going on around him because, his friends are coming to see him and the caregivers are coming to see him and the nurse is coming to see him and I'm coming to see him. And so there's a lot going on, more so than I would have thought at this, stage of his life. And so, to keep an eye on what's going on, that's really important to know who's coming and going and where things are and, just being really vigilant on what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's a bad idea to have a personal safe where you've got important financial documents, where you keep most of your checks, cash, etc., because you just never know, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And we want to protect our senior parents.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And I do think there's a special place in hell for people who scam seniors. I'm just going to go on record by saying that.
I'm going to have to agree with you on that one.
Well, do you have any parting words of wisdom for our listeners today, or anything that, you and I did not talk about that you're like, we can't close out this episode before we talk about this?
And this is a conversation that could go on all day. There's just so much that could be included in it, but I know we can't. So my final advice, I guess, would be to, again, as I said, just be very watchful, be very wary, as you said, of who's coming and going. Step in if you need to and have those conversations. And then also just reach out to other professionals if you need that extra help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Julianne, thank you so much for being here. You have so much wisdom when it comes to this daily money management and helping out your senior parents, especially having those sensitive conversations with family members. So I know our audience is leaving this podcast armed with a lot of good, actionable information. And we've actually got some amazing resources from you that we are going to be linking up in the show notes so that people can basically have this tip sheet of these are the things to be watchful for, and these are the steps that you need to take.
Yes, there's some great tips, some of which we've talked about today. So looking forward to that link. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Listen to this conversation today, ladies, gave me flashbacks to when my dad had gotten older. And, we were in a situation where we introduced a computer into his life because a couple of us lived really far away, and a couple were somewhat closer. And we assumed everything was okay. And then when he passed away, one of my sisters was going through all of his personal effects and going through the computer, and she was like, do you know how many requests for donations and for money? And he apparently was in an online relationship with some of these people, and we think he had been sending money to these people. So I just want to underscore this notion of being vigilant. It's not being nosy. It's being vigilant. And to your point, Christine and Julianne, it's being protective of vulnerable people.
Absolutely.
Really amazing. So thank you for this conversation. Very much appreciate it. Again, as Christine noted, those of you who have questions, there will be links in the show notes. And Christine, if people want to get a hold of you, want to have a further conversation with you, either about this or other financial matters, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, the best way is just to hop over to my website, which is my name, christineluken.com/apply, and you can schedule your 15-minute consult with me right there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for this episode. And listeners, thank you for listening. We hope you found it useful and informative. And we want to, of course, encourage you, if you're not a subscriber already, to hit the subscribe button. That's pretty easy to do. Hit subscribe, then you won't miss a podcast because it will be delivered to whatever listening device you use to listen to these on. Thank you so much. On behalf of Christine, I'm Bill Tucker, and I am urging you to please do not wait. Live your best life and your best day today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Money is Emotional podcast. To get in touch, visit our website at www.christineluken.com or drop us a line at hello@christineluken.com. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Christine Luken. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your advisor, tax professional, or other qualified financial professional with any questions you may have regarding your personal finances.